Today I'm sharing some unique fall crafts using some vintage doilies that I picked up from the thrift store. Let's get started. I have a selection of some embroidery hoops that I got from the thrift store along with this old sheet that I had in my stash. I like to use this because it's a nice neutral color, it's cotton, and it works really well for some different projects. I'm going to be covering each hoop with a piece of this fabric. Now, I was inspired by a project that I had seen on Pinterest, and I thought that I would give it a try. The one that I had originally seen did not use a piece of fabric, but the doilies that I'm going to be using, a couple of them aren't quite big enough to fully cover the hoop, so I decided to use some fabric as a backdrop to help support those doilies. So I'm just going to be showing some different steps. I won't be covering each hoop that I do, but you'll just see here how I'm taking each hoop and showing you each step that I'm going to be doing for each one. They're all the same steps. So you can see I cut my fabric out, I laid it out over the hoop, the inside hoop, and now I'm just going to lock it all into place, and I'm stretching it out until those wrinkles are removed. If you have any like little bits on your fabric, you can take a lint roller and that gets rid of them really well, because my work surface was a little dirty. I forgot to clean it off before I did this. Anyways, now I'm just going to use some scissors and I'm going to cut off some of the excess, but I am leaving enough around the edge so then I can glue it all in place. So here are my hoops all ready to go. Now I'm just going to glue those little excess pieces around the edge, and that will help to secure the fabric in place. Now you can skip this step if you want. If you do skip it, then I would just make sure that you cut off all that excess so then it's even with your hoop. So my hoops are all ready to go. The fabric is in place. Now it's time to lay out the doilies. I've got this really unique one. I didn't even really know what to do with it until I saw that inspiration piece that I had seen on Pinterest. So I thought this one would fit really well on the oval hoop, and I've got this tiny little orange doily. It was too small for this particular hoop, and then this large orange doily, it was too big for the hoop, so I'm just making adjustments accordingly to get them to fit each hoop that I've used. So for this little one, I'm just using a little bit of hot glue here, and I'm going to tack it down in the middle, and then going to go back in with a little bit more hot glue just in a few spots to help hold that doily in place. Now, a lot of times when I'm making these doily projects, I don't usually use hot glue, but I knew that I didn't want to use these doilies for another project. I wanted to create these ones specifically with these doilies, so I felt okay using the hot glue. But if you don't want to use hot glue, then I would suggest that you just take a needle and thread and tack these down in a few spots to help secure the doilies in place. So now I'm going to go ahead and just attach the rest of these doilies. This one, I put it in place. You saw me put some glue in the middle, and then I put the doily down in place in the middle of the hoop. And now I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit more hot glue just in a few spots. But you'll see I'm going to stretch this doily a little bit so it reaches the edge of the hoop. And then I'm going to go and work on the opposite side and do the same thing. That will just help to pull it and stretch it so it fits the inside of the hoop. All right, so I've got all the edges glued in place on this one. Now I'm going to move on to the big one. So I took my hoop apart and I'm just going to drape this large doily over the top. I'm not going to glue this one in place just yet. I'm going to center this best I can onto the fabric, and then I'm going to take the other part of my hoop and place that over. I did have to open it up quite a bit here because we added quite a bit of bulk to this, so make sure you do that. And then you just put that in place and it's going to pull nice and tight. So I found that it was uneven around the edges a little bit. So I just screwed this on nice and tight, and then I started to pull the edges to help even it out. But as I was doing this, I noticed that the edge of this doily was curling downwards and I didn't like that look. So I decided to go in now and add some hot glue on the back side rim and then press that little fringe that we have down, and that will help hold that into place so it doesn't go and curl backwards on itself. So all our hoops and doilies are all prepped and ready to go. It's time to decorate. I have a selection of some branches that I trimmed down. I'm also going to be using some metal leaves that I'm pulling off of a couple of ceramic pumpkins that I had in my stash. I picked these up a few years ago from Dollar Tree. I thought they would look really cute as the leaves for our little pumpkin hoops. And then I'm also going to be pulling off a leaf off of the sign as well that I've got there to the side. And the branches are going to be the stems for each of these pumpkins. So I'm going to just go ahead and finish gathering up my leaves, and then I'm going to put everything into place. I will say I wish this particular leaf was a little bit bigger. I felt like it was out of proportion. I wanted to use it on the large pumpkin here, and I really do wish I had a bigger one, but I'm just using what I have. So now to put everything together. So for the stem, I needed to cut out a little notch out of the tip of my branch. So you can see that I'm just using my cutters here, and I'm going to be carefully cutting a little notch out. That way here, it's going to fit in where the embroidery hoop closes up. It slips in there really nicely, and it goes over the screw that's there as well. So the only way I could get it to fit though was for me to cut that notch out. I am going to just use some hot glue to glue this into place. You want to make sure you hold it in place until that glue sets. So I've got all my stems in place. I did the same procedure for each little branch. You can see how it's connected there. And now I'm going to glue my metal leaves into place. So now you can see these leaves have got like little metal curly cues, so I'm taking advantage of those because you know how pumpkins are, they have those little viney curly cues on them. I'm just figuring out the placement so I know where to add glue. I want this to be touching the edge of our hoop. I felt like that's probably where it's going to get the best support, so I just added some glue to the back, put that in place. And then I felt like I wanted to add just a little bit more. So I grabbed a bag of raffia, and I happened to have some green raffia in here. I thought it would be kind of a fun addition to this particular one, especially since I have the green leaf. So I'm just going to make a simple loopy bow. I kind of wish I would have made it a little bit bigger and added a few more tails, but hey, just making the best of the project here. I'm going to go ahead and just wire that off in the center. That'll help hold our bow together. And then I'm going to snip off the excess wire and then just use some hot glue to glue that in place. The other thing too with this is that it's going to hide where the stem is of our pumpkin, and that will just kind of hide that seam that was left there between the hoop and the stem. You can see how cute that is. And the nice thing about this too is that it adds a little bit of like a viney look as well. So I'm going to go ahead and work on the smaller hoops, just the same procedure as the large one, and you'll see how they come together so well. I have to say, I think these turned out really, really well. And it was a great way to use those awkward doilies that we just don't know what to do with. I think they turned out great. I recently went on a trip with one of my daughters in this small city and we hit up a bunch of thrift stores. We had so much fun. I found this particular piece there and I have no idea what it was for. It had finished edges. I'm going to assume that maybe it was for a top, but I really don't know. But I thought, ooh, what kind of a creation could I make with this? So again, I was inspired by something that I had seen on Pinterest and I thought I would try to recreate it. So I needed to stabilize the top and the bottom, and I'm using some bamboo skewers to do that. You can see that this piece is badly misshapen, and I admit I struggled with this project a bit. I should have wet it and reshaped it, and then I wouldn't have had so many problems, but I was just being impatient here and just decided just to go for it as is. You can see I have went and flipped it over so that the wrong side is facing up, and that is the side where I am going to adhere these little bamboo skewers. So I went with the bamboo skewers because it had a nice neutral color and they were also small enough and strong enough to support this piece. I did end up having to use 2 pieces on the bottom and again on the top. And you can see I'm just working in sections, gluing this into place until I've got it fully stretched out. Again, as I said, I am using 2 pieces of the bamboo skewers for this, but you could use a rectangular doily that's for a table runner. I think that would work great for this project as well. But since I had this particular piece, this is what I chose to use. So I'm going to continue to work on this until I have this piece all stabilized at the bottom. So I removed the pointy ends and I'm now going to add some excess glue at the joint that I had created. In hindsight, I should have left the pointy ends intact and overlapped those 2 pointy ends, and then I probably would have had a more stable joint where the 2 bamboo skewers met. But hey, this was a work in progress. As I was going along, I was trying to figure out the best way to put this together, and I admit I was sitting there for a little while trying to figure this out. Anyways, I did what I could, the best I could, so learn from my mistakes. All right, so I'm going to work on the top, and the top was really badly stretched out. So I was trying to kind of bunch it up a bit along the top of the bamboo skewer, so then the width of the top and the bottom match, because they didn't. Like I said, this was all stretched out on the top. So it took me a little bit of fiddling about. Hopefully you don't have a piece that's badly misshapen like mine. Then you won't have this much problem. But anyway, so I'm just going to go ahead, continue to work on this. I also should have wrapped the edge around the bamboo skewer. I think that would have also helped me a bit with this top part as well. So you can see I have it all in place. I'm flipping it over. You can see it's kind of bunched up at the top to help to straighten it out. And I did the best I could. And I think I did a pretty good job here. So now for the fun part. I went out in my yard and I gathered up some dry grasses and seed pods. And I'm going to weave these in through the holes of this doily. I was inspired by some weavings that I had seen on Pinterest where they did exactly this. They had their weaving. These weavings were done out of fibers such as yarn and string and fabric pieces. And they also intertwined some dried flowers, seed pods, grasses into their pieces as well. And I thought it was such a cool look. So when I had seen that I had grabbed this from the thrift store, I'm like, ooh, I could definitely use this piece for that project. It would give a very similar look. And I just thought it would just be such a cool piece for the fall, especially since we're including some dried florals and grasses and such. So you can go out for a walk in nature and gather some stuff up as well. I've got these branches that I decided to include as well. I thought that was a fun little touch. So I'm just going to continue to work on this until I get a look that I'm happy with. So I like how this is looking here. I think it looks really pretty. I'm going to flip it back over now, and I'm going to be using some jute twine to create a hanger, as I want this to be a wall hanging. So I didn't put this on to start because I knew that as I was weaving the dried florals and seed pods and whatnot into place, I knew that the string would just get in my way. So now I'm going to add it. I'm just using some hot glue, adding a little bit to the edge and then pressing the string into place. Just be careful you don't burn your fingers here. My glue gun is like a lower temp, but I do find that sometimes every once in a while I do get a little bit of a burn. I don't like to use those finger protectors. They don't work for me. They are too small. Anyways, so you've got the hanger in place, and I was going to go and hang it up on the wall, but my joints gave way on me. It just kind of buckled. So I'm going to just trim off some of the excess glue here. And I'm going to brace it with just a little tiny craft stick that I have in my stash. I'm just going to hot glue that into place. I'm just thinking, like, if I would have put those two pointy ends and used enough hot glue to secure them, I wouldn't have had to do this part. So if you make the mistake like I did, then this is a fix for you. But I'm really happy overall with how this project turned out. It is a very, very unique piece. You're not going to see this anywhere else. If you do make this project, please let me know, because I would absolutely love to hear how you managed to put a unique piece like this together. Okay, I found two doilies that were the same style but two different sizes. I also have two round bowls here that I picked up from Dollar Tree. Same thing, they're two separate sizes, one for each size doily. Now these doilies are in rough shape. There was a bit of hot glue on them. They were starting to come apart. So I knew that they would be perfect for crafting. I've got some crochet thread here along with a needle, and I've threaded that on, and now I'm going to use just a basic stitch around the edge of our doily. So I'm going to just start off by tying the thread onto the edge of doily first. I do not want this to give way. Make sure you leave yourself enough of a tail, as we're going to need that later as we come to the end to tie this off. So now all you're going to do is, like I said, just stitch around the edge of your doily. You may have seen me do this before, creating some nice little doily pumpkins. This is going to be the same thing, except we're using this doily to wrap these cute little bowls. So I'm just going to go ahead and stitch this in place, and then we're going to come back and I'll show you what to do next. All right, so we're coming up to the end here, and I'm going to finish up right next to that tail that we had left behind, putting my bowl in place here. It's in the center, and now I'm going to start to pull my one strand of string tight. And I'm going to be moving that ruffle around so then it's all evenly spread out along the edge. I'm going to continue to pull that string tight. I'm trying my best to keep this doily somewhat centered as well. You can see me moving it around. I'm going to continue to pull this, and then you want to close it up, but you don't want to fully close it up. You can see I've got a bit of an opening there, but you can see how pretty that's looking so far. So I have these lights that have got this cork battery pack with the switch. They're for wine bottles, and you can see it's a nice warm white. I just picked these up several years ago at a local craft store. I think you can get them on Amazon. I'm not exactly sure, you'll have to see. But all I'm going to do is feed those lights in through the hole of the doily here. And I'm going to take that cork and I'm going to set it in place, then pull my strings tight. I want the opening of our doily to be just situated around that cork, just below the switch. I'm going to keep those strings tight, and I'm going to tie a knot, and that will help hold that doily in the size that I need so it fits around that cork without that cork falling through. So because the bottom end of that cork is smaller, this works great. And I'm gonna special little trick here for you to show you how you can pull it out and hide it and all that stuff to make it look like a little pumpkin. So you can see how cute that's looking. All right, so now time for the embellishments. I've got this branch here, this little stump that I picked up from a Dollar Tree. It was just in a package. I'm gonna add some hot glue. I'm gonna glue that to the top of our little cork. And you can see that's our little pumpkin stem now. And then I'm gonna add some leaves. You can use any leaves that you like. I've got these nice neutral ones and they're kind of a velvety fabric. So I'm just gonna glue 2 of those in place, and then later on you'll see that I ended up adding a 3rd one. I just felt like it needed 1 more. But I'm gonna go ahead and just put these in place. Just adding a little bit of hot glue. And now I'm going to add some Spanish moss. Now the Spanish moss is gonna look like the little curly cues from the vine, but it's also going to hide the cork. So I'm gonna add just a little bit of hot glue around the top edge of the cork and press that Spanish moss into place. And I'm also adding a little bit to the seam of our branch in our cork. Again, that Spanish moss is going to hide the cork, but I'm making sure that I don't get any glue on the switch. We will need to leave that exposed so I can access it, so we can access it, so we can turn these lights on and off. I just trimmed off the excess, and then I'm just finding my little switch here so I know where it is. It's right there, it's above the battery pack. Turn that on, put that cork into place, and there, you can't even see that little cork showing at all. You don't even know that it's there, but yet it's so easy to access and turn that on and off. I have to say, this is my favorite project of the day. I love how these turned out, and they look so pretty, all lit up. Even on their own, just as is, without the lights on, they look so pretty. They've got like a nice vintage rustic feel. I have this wood canvas panel board, and I picked this up from my local dollar store, but you can get them at Amazon and other arts and crafts supply stores. I really like to use these for different projects. I'm going to be using this Naples yellow hue acrylic paint along with some espresso brown craft paint. I do end up switching out that craft paint for a stain later on, which I'll show you. But in the meantime, I'm going to be painting the center of this panel board. I'm using the back side of this board because it creates a nice frame to use. So I'm going to go ahead and just use a plastic card to apply the paint to the back side. I find that the plastic card is the easiest way to spread it out. It works very quickly. And then I'm going to go ahead and move on to staining the edge, the frame part. So I'm taking a brush, applying some of the paint, and then I'm going to be rubbing it off with a rag. I wasn't sure how well this is going to work. I thought I'd just give it a try, and I have to say I didn't like it that much. So I went ahead and switched to some walnut gel stain. I like the way it looks a lot better. But of course, if you don't have any gel stain, then go ahead and use some craft paint. If I were to use the craft paint, I think I would add just a touch of black to it just to darken it up just a little bit more. So to apply the stain, I am using a rag, rubbing that around, and then if there's any excess, I just can wipe it off. But if I need a little bit more, I can go ahead and add that in as well. So I did the edges, and now I want to do the inside edge of this, but I didn't want to mess up my yellow paint. So I'm going to use some painter's tape, and I'm just going to apply that to protect the yellow paint. I did the best I could, and I'll show you that I still ended up getting a little bit of seepage, but I had a fix for that. So you can see how I've got it all taped up, and I applied my stain to the inside edge here. I'm using a combination of a paintbrush and the rag. I find that the paintbrush allows me to get right into the corners and the edge, and then I'm going to just again use my rag to wipe off the excess. So once that's done, I'm going to set it aside and allow it to dry. While that's drying, I'm going to be working on this piece of birch bark. I thought it would be really cool to use in this project. I just needed to trim it down as it was too big to fit the inside of our frame that we have. So I'm just going to use some old scissors just to trim off the excess, but keep those little pieces because we can use those for future projects. I'm also going to trim off the side. You can see that it is curled up a little bit, but that is okay. It'll just add some interest to our piece. So I wanted to incorporate a doily into this. You can glue this on just as is, like you see me doing here, but I wanted to cut a hole out of the bark. So I put the doily in place where I wanted it to be, and I punctured a hole through the birch bark, and I'm just kind of working away at it until I can get like a bit better of a working space here so I can cut out some excess bark to create a circle. So I've got my hole started. I'm going to put my doily in place, and then I'm going to mark out how big the doily is using a pencil. I just want to make sure that there is going to be touch points between the edge of the doily and the bark because I need to be able to glue this in place. So now that I've got that outline, I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to cut just on the inside of all my pencil marks. Again, that way here I know that I'm going to have touch points between the doily and the edge of the bark. I still needed to do a little bit of cleaning up on the back of this piece of bark. There was still some debris, and that is going to hinder the adhesion between the bark and our canvas panels. So I'm just using a metal spatula to scrape off all the debris. And then when I use some hot glue, I will have a lot better adhesion between the canvas board and the bark. All right, so that's all done. Now I'm going to place my doily, and I'm going to glue this into place. So I've laid it down, and then I'm just going to go ahead and add a little bit of hot glue around one edge, and then I'm going to go to the opposite side and do the same. I have to say, this is looking pretty cool so far. All right, back to the canvas panel board. I'm going to remove the tape. And as I was removing it, this is where I discovered that my stain had seeped underneath the tape. So to fix that, because I really didn't like how it looked, I tried to scrape it away, but that wasn't working either. So what I decided to do was use a little bit of hot glue right along that edge, and then press some jute twine into that glue, and that hid that seepage really well. I couldn't even see it anymore. Okay, now to bring the two pieces together. I put this bark into place, and I still needed to do a little bit of trimming. It was still a little bit too big. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. And then I'm going to be using my hot glue to glue the bark into place. But of course, use whatever glue you'd like. I find that hot glue works the best. I just tipped my canvas board over to get rid of any debris that may have been in the way. And then working very quickly, I'm going to work in sections here. I added some hot glue to the top, making sure I didn't get any on the doily. And I'm going to put that into place and press it down. You want to make sure you hold it in place until the glue sets. And then I'm going to, again, work quickly and gently fold the bark up, add some hot glue to the wood panel, and then press that down into place. I'm okay if this lifts a little bit here and there. I just find that it just adds to the character. So I felt like I needed a little more. I had these wood letters that spelt out the word fall. I couldn't decide if I wanted them to be in gel stain or the Naples yellow hue color. I decided to go with the Naples yellow hue because it went with the background nicely of our panel. And also, this yellow is actually in the bark. If you looked really closely, you could see that yellow, that hint of yellow that's in the bark. And I just felt like it just tied it all together really nicely. So I'm going to give a coat. I ended up giving, I think, 2 to 3 coats per letter. If you want, you could stain the edge of the letters and just paint the top with a color, but just get creative with that part. All right, so now I'm just going to put my letters into place before I commit to gluing them down. And then just at the touch points between the letters and the birch bark, you're going to add some hot glue and then put that into place. Again, hold till the glue sets. Now remember, the surface of the bark is not very even. There is a lumpy and bumpy. I think that's just the nature of it because this has got like some knots in it and whatnot, so it's not laying really flat. But if you have a piece that doesn't have the knots in it, then you might have a nice flat piece to work with. All right, so I've got all those little letters in place, and I have to say, I think this is looking pretty cool. I really love how it turned out. This is such a unique piece. Let me know what you think down below. I have so many more fall crafts for you to check out in this video right here. Let me know what your favorite project was for today, and we will see you in the next one. Thanks. Take care. Bye.